Okay, I've got a question to ask, and you've got to be honest with me about this. When you were a kid, did you ever take a very long road trip with your family, and you or maybe a sibling pestered your parents to death by asking from the back seat, "Are we there yet?" I have to admit, I was that whiny kid in the back seat. And now it's not a question you ask because you're necessarily excited about the destination. It's all about fatigue. You're so incredibly worn out by being stuck in the same place for what feels like forever. You just want the trip you're on to be over with, to get out and stretch your legs and finally be somewhere, anywhere, even if you know it's going to be a very different place than that place you left. Well, lately I've been having that feeling of, are we there yet? A lot. And I ask it even though I already know the answer, just as sure as I did when I was a little kid. The answer is, no, we're not there yet. We'll get there when we get there. And that was never a satisfying answer that gave me any peace. An article recently caught my eye because it was asking that question, although it was phrased a little bit differently. It was written by Tara Hawley, and it was called, "How Much Longer Do We Have to Live Like This?" It's a huge understatement to say our lives have been thrown completely off the rails by COVID-19 in ways no one could ever imagine. Many lives have been lost. People we know and care about are grieving. We're grieving. We might be grieving a friend or a loved one, or grieving for people we've never even met. But we're also grieving the loss of normalcy, the loss of having a normal day with a normal schedule. We're grieving the loss of feeling safe while doing normal things. We'd be here all day trying to list all the normal stuff we've so long taken for granted that we're now unable to do, or that have been altered in ways that only exacerbate the extreme weirdness of all of this. If you even go to the grocery store, whoever imagined a day when you would need to suit up in rubber gloves and a mask to do that? Nothing is business as usual, and we could all use a nice long dose of the usual, just a sense of normalcy and peace. I talk with a lot of people about what's going on. We all talk about what's going on. Like a lot of folks, I'm having meetings or just conversations through Zoom or FaceTime. And, while it's great to have those ways of seeing each other and talking with each other, not one of those conversations goes by without spending some time talking about why we're Zooming or FaceTiming so much. So COVID-19 is the subtext of everything. And a lot of people are just zoomed out. It was kind of novel at first, but now we're more than ready for the day when we can be in the same room and safely breathe the same air and give each other a nice big hug if we want to. So I was not surprised to read in that article that one of our primary causes of grief and anxiety is not having any satisfactory answer to the question of how much longer. The answer to that question eludes people in positions of leadership and even medical experts, and the latest best guesses are really more warnings than answers. Warnings that lifting restrictions too soon could undo any progress that's being made in trying to slow the disease. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb has suggested it might realistically be late summer before we can start coming back to some element of our normal lives, he says. But no one really knows. In the meantime, we're all like kids on a very long road trip, stuck in the back seat. Not a very great place to be. Now, I'm not suggesting that we're behaving like whiny, tired children. This is having real consequences on our lives, on our jobs, on our relationships, on our economy. So it's perfectly understandable to be impatient and fatigued and grieving. And I'm pretty positive the way we think about many ways of being will never be quite back to normal. So in the midst of all that, what does our faith tell us? Who can tell us anything other than we'll get there when we get there? Can we please have a word of hope? Something definitive? How about at least a sense of direction of what we should be doing now to make sense of this and to be of any use? Now, if you're ever reading the Bible and you come across a time stamp, it's something to pay attention to. So many Bible stories, well, they never specify a day or time, but a time stamp is when someone like the author of the Gospel of John writes, "When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, we are supposed to stand up and take notice." Why is that? Well, he's telling us that Jesus appeared to his disciples in the evening on the same day the empty tomb was discovered, which had to be just a mind-blowing, life-changing experience for them. They had heard the reports of the empty tomb that morning. Some had even seen it for themselves, but then they had spent all day holed up together in a dark room, hiding from authorities who were probably out investigating all that, kicking down doors, rounding up suspects, and the disciples knew it was just logical for those authorities to assume the followers of Jesus had removed his body from its resting place to start the rumor that Jesus had cheated death. Of course, they'd done no such thing. They'd been hiding out for days already, most of them, ever since Jesus had been arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. So this was Sunday night. Some of them had been hiding out together in the same place since Thursday night. John's timestamp is there to remind us of just how long they'd been waiting together in fear. And they had every right to be terrified. Out of the blue, life as they knew it had changed forever. The world outside was suddenly filled with danger and death, and they were grieving. They had no idea what was going to happen next, or when, or if things would ever return to normal. As the days dragged on, normalcy was looking pretty doubtful. Now, we don't know what their conversation was over those 3 days, but it's not really hard to imagine. What's happening next? When does this end? How are we going to get through this? And that particular day, Sunday, was super stressful and fatiguing. The news of the empty tomb at that point was upsetting and confusing. It was not reason to be joyful yet. Then, Jesus suddenly appears to them that evening. And John tells us they rejoiced. I'll bet they did. But then what does Jesus say to them? Not once, but twice. He says, "Peace be with you." And that's a very interesting thing to say to a bunch of people who must have imagined everything was now okay, and maybe things could get back to some semblance of normal. Okay and normal usually is a peaceful thing compared to what they'd been through. Okay and normal is what we hope things will be like when we finally reach our destination. But Jesus wishes them peace twice, as if they're going to need a double dose of peace, because the next words out of his mouth must have made them realize that life was not returning to normal. Without missing a beat, Jesus tells them, "Just as God sent me, now I'm sending you." What? Sending us where? You mean this isn't over? Can't we all just be sent back home now and put our lives back together the way they were before? No, he says. You're being sent. Your journey isn't over, far from it. The trip you're on is all about the trip, wherever that takes you. And don't expect life to ever be the same as before. And John tells us that on a few subsequent occasions, Jesus met with his disciples, and they asked him lots of questions, but his answers were never very specific. So they'd ask, so what exactly are we supposed to do now? And he'd say things like, feed my sheep, love each other. It was odd. He never really talked in terms of a destination or a goal. He spoke about going, doing, caring, serving, loving, today. And peace, because you're going to need to rely on that peace I'm giving you as you do all of that stuff. And the only rational reason you would need plenty of peace is if you could expect that your journey of doing, caring, serving, and loving might not always be easy. In other words, being a person of faith, being any person, means that real life has a way of dealing us hands we would rather not play. That's the journey we're all on together. But peace, God's peace with you, in you, and living through you, that will see you through. That peace can feel hard to come by some days, especially these days. The interesting paradox I've witnessed, though, is that the more peace that we give, that peace we've been sent on our journey to share, the more peace we receive. Miriam Knoll is a radiation oncologist who's a contributing writer at Forbes magazine. She recently wrote about how people in the medical community who are working on the front lines are doing, with all the incredible stress placed on them right now. But her article was really about that on the hard marathon journey that so many medical professionals are traveling, how others are providing them a measure of peace. And we've all heard about N95 masks. A lot of us are wearing masks of one kind or another, but N95s are the gold standard. They're very high filtration, so they can block out something as small as an airborne virus. So now every healthcare worker needs to wear one anywhere in a hospital, and it's no big surprise there is a massive shortage of them. Mary Lieberman Brooks is a dermatologist in New York. She was aware of that problem, like we all are, and like most of us, Mary was sheltering in place, not working in any usual sense, waiting and wondering when we might arrive back at normal. But then she realized that in the midst of everything, she was not powerless. She said, I had to do something to help protect my colleagues on the front lines. So she started an online fundraiser with her friend Blima Marcus, who's a nurse practitioner. They raised enough money to purchase thousands of N95 masks, and they distributed them to healthcare workers in hospitals in New York and other states, all free of charge. To meet that same critical need, a different idea came to Chloe Alpert and Liz Klinger from the San Francisco Bay Area. They started a website called Mask Match. It's run completely by 264 volunteers who are all working from home. And on the website, visitors choose I need masks or I have masks. So if you're a healthcare worker who has access to masks, you're connected with someone who needs them. Watch this.
We need to get masks into the hands of the healthcare workers directly. My mom is a lifelong nurse. She and her coworkers were working on their floor without wearing any masks, without any protection at all. And frankly, I was afraid that she was going to die. I was going to lose her. There's literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers who are experiencing the same conditions because of these mask shortages. They're the ones who are fighting for us. They're fighting this awful virus. And if they go down, we go down. So Mask Match is a way for people like you and me to be able to send masks directly into the hands of the healthcare workers who are on the front lines fighting for us. The easiest, fastest, and most underutilized resource right now for masks is right here in our own homes, in our garages, in our closets, in our workshops, in our craft bins. We're able to get these into the hands of the healthcare workers directly and help them in this weird in-between crunch that we have where we don't have any other sources of masks. Whether you're someone with masks or you're a healthcare worker who needs masks, you can go to www.mask-match.com. You fill out a quick form, and then the donor gets connected to a healthcare worker. They get instructions to send their donation to the healthcare worker. You can request USPS pickup if you want to, so that the postal service can pick up the package to be able to send it to the healthcare worker. So you don't have to leave your home to be able to do this. Mask Match has not only been a way for healthcare workers to get the protection that they need, it's a way for them to feel less alone and less afraid, and that there are people out there who care about them and the work that they do. And for all of us, it's a way to feel connected to each other and to help each other during a time that we physically need to be apart. To date, we've already moved over 100,000 masks from generous donors just like you. Together, I think we can make that millions of masks.
I looked on their website this morning, and to date, they have distributed over 143,000 masks. Now, if anyone has the right now to ask the question, how much longer do we have to live like this? It's a healthcare worker on the front lines. And as they're pursuing their calling on this journey we're all on, their own colleagues and anyone, they're finding concrete ways to bring them some peace. They're not waiting to arrive anywhere normal. They are going and doing and caring and serving and loving right now. So the answer I've come to understand today is that whenever I find myself asking, when are we ever going to get there? How much longer do we have to live like this? I realize I'm asking the wrong question. Because here's the thing. I've been sent. I was not born to be in this moment in history, to sit in the back seat and to wait and worry and wonder. I have been put on this earth to help, to share peace. I've been sent to go, do, care, serve, and love. And just speaking for me, I don't want to look back months or years from now and regret that I spent any time doing nothing when I could have done something. We've all been sent. We're all on this same long, strange trip together. Real life never tells us when the journey ends or that it will be easy. But our faith tells us, heck, our common humanity tells us that we're agents of peace, instruments of peace. And peace, God's peace, is not something we're supposed to hold on to tightly until we safely end up someplace, or when we expect things to be normal again. No. Peace is what we share right now. Doing, caring, serving, loving, any way we can. By making a donation to people who are making a difference, by making donations to our food drive, by running that errand for someone who can't, by making that call to check on a friend, by making a pot of soup and delivering it to your elderly or sick neighbor's front porch. Please don't tell me you can't do anything but sit in the back seat. You've been sent to share peace. And right now is when it's needed most.